And hello, everybody. This is Napa Fan here, aka Alexander Graham, and we are here at the Michigan International Speedway for the 15th race of the season in the RTG Winston Cup Series. Like I mentioned, the 15th race of the season here at Michigan on this June evening, and I'm joined alongside Seth Cole for tonight's broadcast. And Seth, we've seen a very interesting season so far here in the Winston Cup Series. Jeremy Jeffries with the most wins out of anybody, Robert Balcon with a lot of wins. Do you think tonight we might have a chance at a first-time winner this season here in the Winston Cup Series?
I kind of feel so because if you look at a lot of the tracks we've been to the past few weeks, it's really been all about track position. Here today, with the way I've seen the setup with the drivers being able to utilize the draft, it's almost like you're racing at a super speedway here at Michigan. So I think you're going to see if anyone's able to pull out a Cinderella story, it might very well be here at the 2 Mile Speedway.
And we're definitely going to have an interesting race. 88 laps of action here at the Michigan International Speedway, 22 to 24 lap fuel runs. So that could definitely make things interesting, especially if a caution falls at the right place. It could turn into a fuel mileage race, but a 3 to 4 stop race depending on how those cautions fall in tonight's event. And going to be interesting to see how it all goes down for these guys here today. In the points standings, Dante Risi comes in the points leader, 560 points towards the championship. Jeremy Jeffries, five-time winner this season, 33 points behind. Terry Bombard is 49 points behind. Grant Wesley, 74 points behind. And Mitch Bombard, 93 points behind coming into tonight's event. On the pole position, the 143 of Bob Dixon, starting to the inside of Grant Wesley in the 88 machine. Andre Mongen in the 27 to the inside of Bernie Mobbs in row number 2. In row number 3, Frank Rivard to the Jeffrey Elliott to the inside of Chuck McClure in the 17. Then the 54 of Robbie Nisus to the inside of Terry Bombard. That's the top 10 starting positions here in this 88-lap race. The top 3 finishers from last week, Terry Bauman, Dave Nelson, and our last winner, Robert Balcon, who got the race victory at the Richmond International Raceway last week. They will start at the back of the field. As per rule, the top 3 finishers of the prior race do not qualify and have to work their way through the field to get to the race lead, if they can. 88 laps of action. What are you most looking forward to here tonight in this one from Michigan?
I'm most looking forward to what I saw in practice. It's really all about how you want to enter the corner and how you want to get the run off the corner. You can drive it in deep, but then you push up off the center and off the corner and maybe lose some momentum. Or you can try riding the top side and then driving it deep off the corner and get some momentum. So it really all is about momentum for these drivers and how they want to approach these corners.
It'll definitely be interesting to see how the racing is here tonight. We're green flag racing at Michigan in the Winston Cup Series for RTG, and Grant Wesley on the front row. We're racing for 88 laps.
Saw them in practice going 4 wide. This is the closest these drivers are going to be to each other all race long. Do we see them take it 3 and 4 wide early on? Obviously a long ways to go in this one with 88 laps, but you got to think when they've got the opportunity to make a pass, when they've got the momentum, they're probably going to keep their foot in it.
There goes Andre Mongen in the 27, looking to the inside of Bob Dixon, but Dixon will hold the advantage on the inside lane in the 143. Will look to lead lap number 1, but here comes the 27 of Mongen, looking to get to the inside. But Dixon will lead lap 1 here at the Michigan International Speedway.
Saw the 27 of Mahjong kind of go down there towards the apron. That is legal. You are allowed to use it if you so choose. You won't probably see many drivers go down there, though, because it's very difficult, especially with a car to your outside, like Mahjong has Wesley to his driver's right, to then be able to move up and get a nice arc into turn 1.
And you're going to see that outside lane get the advantage there with Grant Wesley through turns 1 and 2. He will clear Andre Mongen for the 2nd position. Bernie Mobbs is in 4th, and Frank Rivard in the 5th position. You got Richard Martin, Chuck McClure. Starting the single file out up front, first guy in the inside lane is Jim Glaude in the 72 to the inside of Terry Bombard.
Yeah, around the 8th position is where all the double wide racing is going on for the moment. And this is one of those type of tracks, unlike at a super speedway, where if you race side by side, drivers ahead of you single file are going to pull away. That's not going to be the case here. More than likely, you're going to see these drivers still be able to race double wide and 3 wide and still keep touch with these top 7. As we had a car way up the track further back there, believe that might have been the 54 of Robbie Nisus. I don't think he went up there on purpose either. You're going to see these guys migrating down where that dark gray is. That's where the rubber is. If you go up a little bit higher, more than likely there's not a lot of grip. The car's not going to turn. I think that's what happened to him as he almost visited the turn one wall.
Versus the guys in the back who finished well last week. Haven't been moving their way through the field too well so far. Robert Balcom, our last winner there, currently 22nd. Terry Bauman, 21st. Dave Melson is moving up nicely, though, up to 19th already in this one, getting a few positions. But it's starting the single file out here. And it looks like it may be one of those races where it's difficult to get a run on somebody for the race lead.
Especially early on, I think you're right. This is going to be more of a type of track where you're going to actually want to have a distance on somebody of maybe 3 to 4 car lengths. That allows you to be able to get a big run on them and then use that momentum to make a pass. You see there, Grant Wesley, he backed off a little bit of Bob Dixon there down the back straightaway, had about a car length and a half. That's what gave him the run through 3 and 4 to make this pass down here into 1 and 2.
And not only that, Andre Mangin there pushing Grant Wesley to the inside, and for the race lead goes the 88 of Grant Wesley, but Bob Dixon, might have a run to the inside in the 143, trying to do the crossover on Wesley for the top position, but Wesley has that better arc through turns 3 and 4. They're going to be side by side at the line, though, here for lap number 5.
One thing we're going to see here as well is drivers maybe taper off on this side-by-side racing the longer we get into a run, because at Michigan, the right front is the tire that heats up the most, and it makes it very difficult 20 laps, 25 laps in to be able to run down there against that yellow line. The car wants to push up. So these drivers are taking advantage right now of the cooler tires making these side-by-side passes.
Top 4 right now. As a matter of fact, the top 5, I believe. And none of these drivers have won a race yet this season, so this track may be a bit of an equalizer, at least early on here in this one. They are still side-by-side for the race lead between Dixon and Wesley. Here comes Bernie Mobbs for third. He's got Frank Rivard behind him there. And Rivard's going to move up to the 4th position as they get a strong run on that inside lane. Dixon moving back to the inside of Wesley for the top position. And it looks like he might clear the 88 heading into turn number 1.
We're 7 laps in, and it almost looks like we've just come to take the green to start this race. They're 2 by 2 by 2, about 5 rows deep all over again. And we got to mention as well that this series is very unique. It is the Winston Cup Series, which means it runs just like the regular Winston Cup Series used to. 36 races, driver with the most points in the season accumulated is the champion. But they also have this season split into 2 segments, the first 13 races and the second 13 races. We're in race 2 of segment 2 right now. Those drivers that win those 2 segments, they get bonus points towards a chase system in the final 10 races. So you end up having 2 champions. You have a champion that is the chase winner, if you will, the chase champion, but the overall champion is the one that ends up getting, obviously, the big trophy at the end of the season, accumulating the most points in 36 races. And right now, with Dante Risi in this field, the points leader, the closest guy to him, as you mentioned at the top of the program, Jeremy Jeffries, is not in the field tonight, so Risi's going to extend that points lead a little bit if he can finish well at Michigan.
We'll have to see how it all goes down for Risi in this one, deep in the field so far, but we're still early on. Wesley back to the inside of Bob Dixon for the race lead. Watch out for Bernie Mobbs here as well in the 90s, up to the 3rd position. Frank Rivard and Richard Martin now inside the top 5, and stacked it up a little bit there. Rivard had a huge run on Bernie Mobbs, and he's also going to get a run to the inside of Bob Dixon for 2nd. And that's going to allow Wesley to pull away. That's the biggest gap we've seen the leader have all night long here in Michigan.
Side-by-side racing, the draft reliance that we see, and the speeds they carry, 185 miles per hour going into turns 1 and 3. A lot of people classify Michigan and its sister 2-mile track of Auto Club as super speedways. No surprise to see some of these guys up here at the front, like Wesley, Dixon, Bernie Mobbs. We usually see them at the front in the RTG Talladega Challenge, so that super speedway expertise coming into play here today at Michigan.
About Chuck McClure splitting 3 wide in the middle of Dixon and Mobbs for 3rd. And Frank Rivard, a great run there, now up to the 2nd position in the number 35. And Richard Martin, I think he might have had to step out just a little bit there. They jammed it up a little bit. And Mangin in the 27 is going to fall all the way back now to, I believe, the 8th position. You got Jeffrey Elliott just ahead of him there. But Mangin falling back a little bit there. Not the best of starts for him at this point here in Michigan. But Frank Rivard's up here now. This is the highest he has been all night long. And now he's in the 2nd position looking to chase down Grant Wesley for the race lead.
Yeah, going back to the 27 of Andre Manjung, you talked about the fact that he was falling back. We saw early on him trying to make passes on the inside and could not get the momentum off the corner. He's the one that checked up these guys, including Richard Martin in the 43. Again, on the bottom line, could not get back to the throttle, got tight through the center. So he is really struggling with that Coors Light machine right now early on in this one.
Right behind him, you got Jim Glaude, just inside the top 10. Jeffrey Elliott slipping back a little bit there. There's Andre Rayum in the 63. Dave Little in the 083. Dave Melson up to the 14th position now as he started in the back of the field. Chris Elliott is here as well. Ronald Lucet in the 62. Dante Risi deep in the field as our points leader, but like you said, Seth, considering that Jeremy Jeffries is not in this race, he should be able to extend his points lead heading into Pocono next week. Then you got the 57 looking to the inside of the 69. Stefan Martel and Terry Bauman in the back of the field. Robert Balcom back there as well. Robbie Nisus in the 54 and Benoit Plourde in the 87. Mitch Bombard also in the back of the field, and Cy Jones is lost the draft. Back to the race lead. Grant Wesley holding on. It's back to a single file line throughout the top 5 positions. Frank Rivard in second. Chuck McClure here in the 17. Looking to get a run on the 35. Richard Martin and Terry Bombard at the top 5 right now here at Michigan, lap 13 of 88. We're halfway through a fuel run here, so you think we're going to get a caution before the cycle of green flag pit stops?
As of right now, the way these guys have been able to split themselves up at the front, the way they've been able to keep it side by side all the way through the field and keep it green, I don't really think so, but you bring up a great point with those pit stops potentially under green, because these guys are carrying speeds anywhere from 170 to 185 all the way around this racetrack. They're going to have to get those cars down to 65 miles per hour off the high banking to the flat apron when they come to pit road, and with the fact we're seeing this track take on the super speedway type fundamentals, more than likely you're going to have to be of the strategy of coming to pit road with a group of other drivers, and so you get about 6-7 drivers trying to get themselves down to pit road at 65 miles per hour, maybe more hectic than trying to pit at Talladega or Daytona.
Yeah, and this is a smaller racetrack, and the entry in the pit lane is a little bit more difficult than it is at Daytona or Talladega. You're coming off of the corner, and the front stretch here is a complete curve, so you're not in a straight line while trying to enter the pit lane, and that's going to make it a little difficult for these guys to come down, but these are some really good drivers here. They've done a great job so far, a great race so far here in Michigan. Frank Rivard trying to get a run on Grant Wesley for the race lead, but they're staying single file for now, running this thing out, possibly until the green flag cycle pit stops. You definitely want to be in a good order once that cycle begins. Here comes Bernie Mobbs. He's got a run on Terry Bombard, but he is not going to be able to keep the inside, and he will remain in the 6th position.
Best battle right now has been going on from 8th place on back. Pole sitter Bob Dixon just now making it by Andre Mangian, as well as also you've got the 056 of Jeffrey Elliott and the 72 of Jim Glaude. Those 4 have been mixing it up the last couple of laps. I noticed back there the 018 of Robert Baucom. He was obviously last week's winner, had to start at the rear of the field because of being in the top 3 last week. He's not really made a charge up here to the front, and he was one of the fastest in practice, so I'm almost wondering if he might be back there saving a little bit.
Oh, and around! 72 got spun down the backstretch. Jim Glaude has rear-end damage. Got realistic damage tonight, and in-game cautions, and that should bring out the first caution of the night.
Dave
Melson got caught up in that one as well.
Hard to tell if he spun all the way down to the inside wall or not. I don't know if he did. He went out in that direction, but he may have gotten on the brakes quickly enough to not hit the inside wall.
Robert Melson looks like he has a clean race car. Looks like he just got spun around. Well, a good opportunity to come down the pit lane for these drivers. Grant Wesley, the race leader. Frank Rivard, Chuck McClure, Richard Martin, and Terry Bombard, the top 5. And that was a very interesting situation down the backstretch there with Jim Glaude in the 72. And
like bumper grab. A little bit of bumper grab there. It was hard to tell who it was directly behind him, but I don't think he came up into them. I think they were trying to give him a bump draft down the back straightaway, and it just went wrong.
63. Andre Rayum there. He tried to help him out. And just too much for Jim Gloud to handle down the backstretch, and it sent the 72 Milliolo machine around.
We're going to look here from the 13 of Dave Melson just to see if indeed he did get on the brakes quickly enough to not get into the wall.
And he barely touched Rayum in the 63. They may not have even touched. It was really close, but thankfully they did both avoid the inside wall. Melson was really close, but able to save it there in the number 13 machine.
And I know that this Michigan in particular has some pretty high grip, which is allowing these drivers to be able to make the kind of moves they are. The downside is if you're like someone like Dave Melson who goes into that long slide, your tires are going to be really worn down. So the fortunate thing, as you mentioned, it's in-game caution. So with that caution coming out, you're able to come back down pit road, get those 4 fresh Goodyears, get back out there. If it had been in-game caution, or not in-game, manual cautions, and a caution not coming out, more than likely that 13 would have had to have been on pit road for an unscheduled stop.
Andre Rayum, Mitch Bombard, and Sally Jones stayed out that lap, but I would imagine they're going to come down next time by. Grant Wesley won the race off the pit lane, then Frank Rivard, Terry Bombard, Chuck McClure, and Bob Dixon, the top 5.
Noticed as well, a couple of cars have been bouncing off the wall the last couple of laps just before that caution. We saw the 54 of Robbie Nices falling back, and I think just before that wreck happened, he slammed the wall coming off of turn 2. And of course, with realistic damage, you are definitely going to feel that in the car. I talked about the fact that the car is going to get tight anyway on the long run with that right front heating up. You get yourself right side damage, it's going to be even more difficult to get that car to turn left.
Does appear, though, at least from my angle, that he did repair the damage, at least to what he could. I don't see any cosmetic damage, at least, on the 54 anymore, so looks like they might have gotten that fixed on the pit lane. Grant Wesley will inherit the race lead as the 3 guys who stayed out the last lap have come down. So on the restart, it will be Grant Wesley leading us to the green flag, then Frank Rivard, Terry Bombard, Bob Dixon, and Chuck McClure. The only driver of these top 5 guys who have won a race this season is Terry Bombard, winner at Martinsville and Talladega. The way this race is played out is similar to a Talladega race. I think they spread out a little bit more here, but the draft is still just as effective in this one as it is at a traditional superspeedway like Daytona or Talladega.
And as we mentioned, Jeremy Jeffries, second in points, is not here. Terry Bombard is the closest competitor Dante Ricci has for that points lead, 49 points back, third in the standings. So right now for him, as well as Grant Wesley, fourth in points, to be up here towards the front, this is kind of putting Dante Ricci on his toes, realizing, hey, I probably got to get up here, maybe finish in the top 10, top 15 to make sure I have a sizable enough gap heading into next week's race.
Dante Ricci currently 14th right now. We really haven't seen much of him at all here tonight. But Terry Bombard in the 10 has a good opportunity at surpassing Jeremy Jeffries in second in the standings. He comes in 49 points behind the points leader, 16 behind Jeremy Jeffries. He should be able to, if he finishes in the top 5 especially, should have enough points to advance his way past Jeffries in the championship. And then you have Chuck McClure coming down the pit lane. And same with Robbie Nices in the 54.
Yeah, this is interesting. The 17 of Chuck McClure coming down pit road. He would have restarted in the 5th position had he stayed where he was. I'm working the calculators here. These drivers looked like, based on the fuel window coming into this race, they were going to have to make at least 3 pit stops anyway. Right now, if we end up going back green here on lap 21, they're still going to have to be on pit road another 3 times. So the only thing I could see maybe giving a little bit of advantage here to the 17 car is possibly being able to stretch it a little bit further on fuel, maybe 1 or 2 laps. But again, like I said, I think you're more than likely going to want to come to pit road with a group of drivers based on just how draft reliant this track and this race has proved to be.
Well, Chuck McClure will go to the back of the field, and the whole pack will restart with each other here. And Nice is also coming down, or should I say Nice is coming down the pit lane in the 54, and then Cy Jones as well in the 7. So that's going to move a few guys up to the field. Bernie Mobbs now going to restart in the 5th position with Andre Mongen in 6th. Richard Martin, Jeffrey Elliott, Robert Balcom is now inside the top 10. Our last winner looking to go 2 in a row. And then Dante Ricci is going to move inside the top 10. because of McClure coming down the pit lane. Gonna get ready to go for the restart on lap 21 of 88 here at Michigan. Almost a quarter of the way through this one here tonight. Hope you folks are enjoying the broadcast. Grant Wesley gonna lead to the green flag for our first restart of the night here in the Winston Cup Series at Michigan.
And don't expect that these drivers are going to settle themselves into a long green flag run here again, because we saw they were aggressive at the initial drop of the green flag back on lap 1, and we're double wide again. These drivers, they'll be anxious to try and pick up spots here on the early restart.
A good jump there for Terry Bombard. That inside lane seemed to have a better advantage, a lot like the Cup Series at Atlanta. That outside lane, not a good place to restart, and Frank Rivard did not get going. Here comes Bob Dixon for third on Rivard. He will gain another position there, but now it's Terry Bombard, the two-time winner this season, looking for his third win of the year here in the Winston Cup Series, looking to chase down Grant Wesley. But Wesley, he may be fourth in the points, but he has yet to win a race this season, so I'm sure Wesley would love to dominate this one and go to victory lane here in Michigan. Lap 22 of 88 here at Michigan, next time by a quarter of the way here in the RTG Winston Cup Series.
Yeah, Grant Wesley's been very consistent this season. He was fourth in the segment 1 point standings after race 13 at Dover, behind Terry Bombard, Jeremy Jeffries, and Dante Reese.
In the wall in the back,
Richard Martin.
And that was Jeffrey Elliott, I believe, who was behind Martin, and they both hit the outside wall. And like you said, with realistic damage, those drivers are going to be feeling that. Jeffrey Elliott falls to the back of the field, and Richard Martin also has some damage, I believe. Oh, he's got a lot of damage. You can see the right front kind of poked out there on the hood of the 43 machine. That is definitely going to hurt his aerodynamics, and in a place like this, oh, a lot of damage on the right side of Richard Martin's car. He's probably going to lose a lot of ground. Here comes Frank Rivard, moving his way back through the field in the 35, up to third now. He got around Bob Dixon, tried to make a run on Terry Bombard for the second position, could not do so, but he will file into the third position and have another shot at the 10. But Grant Wesley continuing to lead here in Michigan, lap 24 of 88 this time by.
Looking to see if we can get a clear shot of the right side of Jeffrey Elliott's car as well. We saw that extensive damage on Richard Martin's machine. Now, the good news is it doesn't look like it's affected him speed-wise for the moment. He's been able to kind of hold strong with the position he's in. The bad news is he's going to have to make a decision if we end up having some green flag pit stops on whether he wants to fix that damage or not. If he does choose to fix the damage, that's going to be a little bit lengthier of a stop on pit road.
We'll have to see how that affects Richard Martin. There's a pretty considerable gap between Dave Melson, who's the next car in line, to Richard Martin. The top 10 drivers are all in a single file line right now, and they're pulling away slightly from the rest of the field. Chris Elliott in the 9, trying to help out Richard Martin here, not going for the move yet on the 43 machine, so they're trying to get that 43 to catch up to the rest of the field, and Bernie Mobb's going to slip up there a little bit on the inside. They're going to have a run on him. And Ronald Lucet in the 62 moving himself through the field inside the top 10 now. Frank Rivard's going to try again for the second position on Terry Bombard, but not going to be able to get the run this time around either.
Yeah, how about that 13 up there of Dave Melson? I mean, he was a car we saw spinning almost into the inside wall for our first caution. He's up here in the top 10 position, and you can see right there, I believe that Elliott decided, you know what, I cannot push this 43 any longer. The worst thing right now is to have a car with damage out in front trying to lead a draft, because that line's just not going to go anywhere. So you see, after the 9's past the 43, he's latched onto the back of the 13 of Melson. Right now, for Martin, he just has to stay in the draft. For other drivers behind him, they cannot have him holding them up. Otherwise, they're going to lose out in this front pack.
And I definitely think he's a little bit slower than these guys, not able to really stay with the draft ahead of him as well as his competitors. There's Dante Reese. He's going to make a move to the inside of Richard Martin for the 12th position. But it did help there that Bernie Mobb slipped up a little bit. That slowed the back guys in that pack down enough so that Chris Elliott and Dante Reese in this pack, this second pack that was behind, to catch up to the first pack. So it's pretty much one big pack right now here at the Michigan International Speedway. It's still the same top 5. Grant Wesley, Terry Bombard, Frank Rivard, Bob Dixon, and Andre Magin in the 27, holding on to 5th. Ronald Lucet there in 6th now. Here comes Robert Balcom for 7th. Remember, he started in the back of the field for this race as he was one of the top 3 finishers in our last race. The rule is if you're one of those top 3 finishers, you do not qualify and you start in the back for the next race. Well, Balcom's made up those positions very nicely so far, and not even halfway through this race, he's inside the top 10 in 7th.
Yeah, and Balcom's had a very limited number of starts this season, which subsequently has him 22nd in the overall standings. You mentioned the fact he's a multi-time winner on the year. I think he's made a total of 7 starts so far this season in only 14 races, so only 50% of the races he's actually taken part in. So I don't know if he'll necessarily have enough time here in the regular season to be able to get himself up into the championship battle for the overall championship, but certainly looking like he's got some good momentum here heading into segment 2.
I definitely imagine he does. He made a pass there on Ronald Lucet for 6, and now he might have his eyes set on Manjan in the 27. These guys are right on each other. They're not spreading out as much as we were seeing earlier on, and it's a lot like Talladega where they close back in, a bit of an accordion effect. They close back in on each other, and they're generally staying in their respective positions right now. Bob Dixon looked on Frank Rivard, but he's going to remain in the 4th position for now. Another guy we have yet to mention inside this top 10, Stefan Martel in the 57. Good run for him, currently running 9th, with Dave Melson now looking to the inside of him for the 9th position.
I was watching Stefan Martel. I was watching Martel the last couple of laps going into turn 1. Looks like he just gave up some spots there, letting both the 13 and the 9 on by. But he's doing exactly what every driver wants to do here at Michigan, and that's almost hit the wall going into turn 1 as you try and drive it deep into turn 1 and then exit off of turn 2. There's a fine line, though. If you brush the wall just enough, it scrubs off too much speed and you're going to lose positions. Michigan, with it being the type of track it is all about momentum. If you lose just a little bit of speed, it's going to translate into 4, 5, 6 spots that you're going to lose as well.
And he just lost 4 spots. The 57 falling back to the 12th position, or now 13th position, after he got passed by Melson, Chris Elliott, Terry Bauman, and Dante Risi. So that last lap did not work out too well for him. Meanwhile, for the 2nd position, Frank Rivard and Terry Bombard for the 2nd place. And the 35 is going to have help from Robert Balcom, who has moved himself up to 4th now. Balcom able to get around Bob Dixon and Andre Manjan, and now he's going for 3rd on Terry Bombard. This 18 is moving through the field very quickly. He might just be the biggest threat to win this race here tonight in Michigan.
Could very well be. You saw there when Rivard and Bombard were side by side, just the run that Balcom was able to get. He was trying to figure out which lane he wanted to choose. I think he may have been looking for a 3rd lane going into turn 3, but was kind of boxed in. Finally decided to ride behind Rivard and will move by Bombard for that 3rd spot. Now sets his sights on the top 2.
And Terry Bombard falling back to 4th. You got the 143 of Bob Dixon now in 5th, and Manjan falling back to the 6th position. Manjan had a run there on Dixon. And Bombard's now going to fall back even more. I'm wondering if something happened to the 10. Lost a lot of ground there, did not get off the corner well at all, and now a bunch of drivers moving to the inside of Bombard, and he's going to fall back even further through the field.
We've just had a change for the lead as Frank Rivard got a great run out of turn 4. Thought about going to the outside, but then crossed lanes to the inside. Nothing Grant Wesley could do as Rivard had the drafting help from Robert Baucom, and he is going to move to the top position. Will the 35. First lap, he's going to lead here today under green flag conditions.
And Frank Rivard looks to have a strong car, but I think the guy behind him has even a stronger car. Robert Baucom now up to 2nd. And he has definitely moved up to the field better than anybody else in this race so far. And now to the inside of Frank Rivard for the race lead. Robert Baucom going to take it away. Grant Wesley there in the 88 in 2nd now. And now Wesley's going to move back to the inside as Baucom overshot turn 1. They're going to be side by side on lap 34 down the backstretch here in Michigan.
Almost a little contact there as Wesley's car pushed up off of 2. They remain nose to tail down the back straightaway heading into 3. And you got your pole sitter, Bob Dixon. He's back up here in the mix as well. That STP Chevrolet trying to go coast to coast here today at Michigan. And by the way, Alex, we're starting to close in on maybe hitting our first round of green flag pit stops. We went back green on lap 21. We're going to see these drivers on pit road somewhere within the next 10 laps.
We definitely will. Of course, we've had one caution so far tonight. That was Robert Glaude going around down the backstretch. Other than that, a very clean race out of these guys and a very good race at that. They're now lapping the number 7 of Cy Jones in the Sunoco machine, and that got a little interesting right there off
Yeah,
the
it did.
corner. They're
Gary
still
Bombard
side by side for the race lead.
Gary Bombard lost some momentum there. He was on that outside line, almost in a 3-wide situation, had to lift when they caught up to Cy Jones. And, Jones did nothing wrong. He's obviously off the pace, and he was trying to get out of everybody's way. It's just a horrible place to try and encounter a slower machine here at such a momentum-based track as Michigan, coming off of a corner onto the straightaway.
And you speak about momentum. These guys going side by side have brought in Frank Rivard and Andre Mangin back inside this lead battle. And not only that, here's Ronald Lucet up to 5th in the 62. Bob Dixon fell back to 6th, and you got Bombard in a battle with Bernie Mobbs there for 7th. But they remain side by side for the race lead. Balcom and Wesley. These guys seem to have equal race cars. Wesley had the better of Balcom the last lap, but it looks like Balcom's going to get the race lead this time around. Very, very good battle. Now you have Frank Rivard helping Grant Wesley on the outside lane, and here comes Mangin in the 27 with a huge push from Lucet.
Yeah, Mangin almost ran into the back of Frank Rivard because he had Lucet into the back of him, but how impressive for some of these guys that had to start shotgun at the rear of the field. Baucom, who of course won last week, now up here battling for the lead. Lucet, who finished 3rd last week, is now up here in the top 5. And second place finisher last week from Richmond, Dave Melson, has done a good job of bouncing back from that spin in the back straightaway. He's just outside the top 10 right now in that 13.
These guys have definitely rebounded very nicely. And of course, at a place where the draft comes into play, it's not that difficult to work your way to the back to the front. And Balcom made it look easy once he got to the front, but he has not been able to solidify the race lead ahead of Grant Wesley. They have been side by side for 5 consecutive laps, I do believe, here in Michigan. And I don't know if they're going to let up anytime soon. Of course, we're going to have green flag pit stops here in a few laps, so it'll let up then. But they may remain side by side until our first set of green flag pit stops in this race.
Balcom just got what he needed, about half a car length advantage going into turn 3. I think he'll get the momentum off 4 and clear for the top spot. What Wesley needed to do was keep it side by side exactly down the back straightaway to have any way of advantage of holding that 18 machine off. And now you can see Balcom's going to show the way. But remember, he saw Rivard push Grant Wesley on the outside line. Those two might work together to go back at this 18 car.
We're going to have to see. I think this field knows that Balcom has the strongest chance of winning this race, so if they work together to get around him, they might have a better shot at beating him here tonight at Michigan. But now single file throughout the top 10 positions. Balcom has officially cleared Grant Wesley for the top position in a very good battle with Grant Wesley. Finally got the best of them there, but we're not even halfway through this race yet, so we'll have to see how it all plays out, especially considering that we're closing in on green flag pit stops. Balcom didn't get the best of runs there off of turn number 4, and Wesley might get a run to the outside of him once again, and he's going to have help from Frank Rivard as well. Wesley with a great entry in the turn 1, and he may be able to remain side by side off of turn 2. Couldn't hold it on the outside that time. But he's going to try a crossover to the inside down the backstretch. Going to remain side by side.
First time inside the top 10 for the 69 of Terry Bauman, doing a great job as he took a look to the outside of Bernie Mobbs there going into turn 1. He has cleared Mobbs now for the position, so move the 69 up to P7, and he wants more. He's going to now look to the inside there of Andre Manjang. Good battling up here inside the top 10. There's Chuck McClure, who, remember, came to pit road at the 1 to green signal on that last caution, the only caution we've had so far. He's been able to work his way back up into the top 10 now.
Good runs for these guys here just inside the top 10. If they get a good pit stop during our next cycle, they could find themselves inside the top 5. I'm definitely intrigued to see how this field will spread out once we get a green flag cycle of pit stops in this race. We've seen these guys bunched up the entire night, but I would imagine it'll be a little bit more spread out once we get a green flag cycle. Robert Balcom continuing to lead. Grant Wesley in second. Frank Rivard, Ronald Lucet, and Bob Dixon, the top 5 here in Michigan, lap 42 of 88.
I'm also thinking about, when we see these drivers, if they end up getting the chance to make green flag pit stops, do they maybe, we know they're going to have to go with 2 cans of fuel, but do they possibly go with a 2-tire strategy? They maybe go with no tires, because a lot of times when you're at the super speedways, you choose to not go with any tires for 2 reasons. One, most oftentimes your tire wear isn't that bad at the super speedways like Daytona and Talladega. But number 2, you don't want to spend extra time on pit road in case your pit crew makes a bad pit stop. And I think we got pit stops taking place here as some drivers moving up the track. Yeah, Rivard in the 35 is on pit lane.
Yeah, and it looks like he's not going to be the only guy. Dave Little and Jim Glaude in the back of the pack come down as well, but I'm not sure if you want to be the only guy coming down. You want to have some drafting help here because, as we have seen here in Michigan, the draft is very important. These guys have pretty much been in the pack all night long, so we'll have to see how that affects Frank Rivard's race. But Balcom, Wesley, imagine a lot of these guys are going to start coming down the pit lane here in the next few laps. We'll have to see if anyone get the advantage on Balcom here off the cycle of green flag pit stops.
I don't know if the 87 of Benoit Plourde, if he was just being very conservative coming to pit road, or if he might have been running out of fuel, but he was very slow through 3 and 4 as Wesley.
And we'll have to see if he ends up with a speeding penalty from that. Andre Magin in the 27 also down. Chris Elliott and Stefan Martel from the back of the field.
Richard Martin in to fix his damage as well in the 43.
We'll have to see how that affects Richard Martin's race here. Obviously, we saw what happened to him as he got shuffled out of line, hit the outside wall a few laps ago. And Wesley will win the race off of those guys. Back behind them.
Whoa, Terry Bow! Oh, good gracious. Close call there for the 69 machine as he almost spun it coming onto pit road.
Thankfully, they kept it together there. Bob Dixon down. Robert Balcom down as well. Dante Risi down with these guys. And you got these 3 guys. Dave Melson, the 3 guys who started in the back of the field. They're all right on each other on the pit road. Balcom will get the best of those guys. And Balcom will win the race off of the 3rd set of drivers. Now we're going to have to see where the rest of the field cycles through. There is Grant Wesley coming across the line. I believe that he has the advantage of all the guys who have already stopped. Will he get the advantage, though, on Robert Balcom? Problem is, Balcom does not have any drafting help at this point, so I'd imagine Wesley will close into the 018, excuse me, here in a couple of laps if he doesn't catch up to him now.
Just to update, Chuck McClure and Ronald Lucer have come into pit road as well, and looked like Chuck McClure may have overshot his pit stall, so he's going to lose some valuable time there in the 17 car.
And Nice is also down in the 54. We see Lucet there in the 62. But it will cycle back to the 018 of Robert Balcom. But Grant Wesley, Frank Rivard, Andre Magin, and Terry Bombard all on each other here. These have been 5 of the strongest drivers in this race, and they are all within a second of each other here off the first green flag cycle of pit stops here today. We're past halfway here at Michigan. 43 laps to go. What are you looking at the rest of this race here in Michigan? Do you think we're going to get another caution? Because we're definitely going to have to come down again. Could be interesting rolling to the finish of this one here in Michigan.
The only other place I can really see with the way the field is spread out right now possibly causing an incident would be pit road, when they would have to come and make that final pit stop, which, according to my calculations, is going to be somewhere between lap 66 to lap 70. That's when they're going to be within the fuel window to stretch it. Some of these drivers may actually decide to short pit and maybe come to pit road a little bit sooner than that, maybe somewhere around laps 62 to 64 to make it the rest of the way. But I don't think that this Michigan, if a spin takes place down the apron on the access road heading towards pit lane entrance, I don't think that would throw a caution. So unless we end up having drivers really battling hard here for position and at least a contact, I see this thing possibly going green all the rest of the way to the checkers.
We'll have to see if that's the case. It's 41 laps to go. Robert Balcom, the race leader. Grant Wesley, Frank Rivard, Andre Magin, and Terry Bombard. Dante Risi, he's up to 6th now. He had a great cycle and moved himself through the field very well. Chris Elliott is 7th. Bernie Mobbs, Bob Dixon, and Terry Bauman, the top 10. But that's a great jump there for Risi. It's the first time I think he's been in the top 10 all day, and now If he can close up to the back bumper of Terry Bombard, we'll have to see. He's running faster lap times than Bombard right now, so I would imagine he will eventually join this lead pack and maybe have a shot at the race lead.
And if he's running faster lap times, that means he is in the vicinity of just getting a little whiff of draft off the back of Terry Bombard. He's about a 10th quicker each lap, so he is going to catch up here to this top 5 and get himself up here into a position to maybe be a contender for this win. I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised that that strategy for Frank Rivard actually worked out based on the... Oh, we got a caution. Caution's
we do,
out. We
yeah,
had a wreck
something.
in turn 4.
Yeah, they were slowing down there, and the yellow was out here at Michigan, lap 49, and we see the tire tracks going in the turn 4.
Got a car down on the apron, I think, that might have brought this yellow out. I think that might be the 63 that maybe brought this out. Andre Rayum's got some pretty extensive rear-end damage on that that machine.
Take a look and see what happened here to bring out the second caution. Oh, wow. I think Jim Gloud in the 72 lost it. Oh, he might have warped. And that sent the 97 around of Mitch Bombard, and then the 63 had nowhere to go to avoid it. And Ronald Lucet also got spun, but there was a massive warp on Jim Gloud's machine. I think that's what caused this one.
He was already off the pace after being involved in the first wreck, and yeah, actually it looks like, I don't think it was a warp. From what it looks like, his car with that rear end damage, that's just going to make the car wicked loose going into the corner. That car was about to go around on him, and he hit the brakes to avoid spinning with that loss of momentum. That's what caused the 97 of Mitch Bombard to get into him.
All I know is that everyone went out when he started spinning there, on my end at least, so definitely a wild situation right there. It's been a tough day for Jim Gloud in the 72. Obviously, you see the damage to his machine. And now, this is definitely going to make the pit strategy interesting, because even from here, they're going to have to make another stop in this race. And off the pit lane, it's Robert Balcom, but Ernie Mobbs, I believe, is second off. Dante Risi up to third. Dave Melson also playing strategy, and Richard Martin is getting hit on the pit lane.
Yeah,
Chris Elliott just ran right into him, and Elliott has massive damage in the 9.
Yeah, the 43 tried to floor it coming out of his pit stall. It spun it around, and he was facing perpendicular right in the middle of both lanes of pit road. Nowhere for anybody to go, especially with the fact Michigan's one of those tracks that has that wall separating the infield grass from pit road.
And that is most likely, I don't think I need to say most likely, it will end Chris Elliott's day in the 9. He had a good run going for him as well. Tough way to end the day here at Michigan with a pit road incident.
And that caution was a huge break for Richard Martin back there, where he had come to pit road, gotten his damage somewhat repaired, and had been able to manage to keep himself on the lead lap. Now he's going to have even more damage to repair as well.
Bad day gone worse for Richard Martin than the 43, but it's not severe damage from that hit, thankfully, so he may be able to remain on the lead lap here.
Got some more drivers hitting pit road that had stayed out, including Mitch Bombard there in the 97, Robbie Nisus. Benoit Plard was also in. So this should shortly cycle the race lead over, well...
And then Grant Wesley, Frank Rivard, Bob Dixon, and Jeffrey Elliott, I believe that they're going to stay out. I would imagine Wesley, Rivard, and Dixon are going to stay out. They have been up front all day. So Balcom, they're going to have a bit of an advantage, I think, those guys who came down. Everyone still has to make one more stop. But for Wesley, Rivard, and Dixon, they're going to have to make their stops earlier. And if a caution happens to come out in between when they make their green flag stops and when Balcom and everyone else makes their next stop, they might not be in a good cycle. Not only that, these guys might have taken some tires on the pit road this past time as well. So Balcom, Bobs, they might be a little bit faster than these guys. I'm not sure if they're going to come down here or not, but I wouldn't understand that strategy by Grant Wesley and these guys if they're going to come down now.
I think they're going to stay out, and I think really the tire situation is not that significant that it's going to put them at a deficit to Balcom because they only were out there running maybe 3 or 4 laps on their set of tires before that caution came out. So now running under pacing, the tires have a chance to cool down. And to your point, everyone's going to have to be on pit road yet again one more time. So why give up the track position?
So
Now,
Grant
in
Wesley,
this, I should mention too, in this league, in all of the RTG leagues, there's not one, but there are 2 free pass machines. You see right there, Benoit Plard and Robbie Nisus. They were the first 2 cars 1 lap down. So you see them going around. They are both going to get the free pass here under this caution.
and Chris Elliott has a new race car. Looks pretty nice. Got the damage repaired on that one, but he'll be sent to the back of the field. But he will remain on the lead lap, so not all is lost for Chris Elliott in this race. Grant Wesley, your race leader. Frank Rivard to his outside. That's the front row for this restart. Bob Dixon and Jeffrey Elliott. This is the highest we've seen Jeffrey Elliott in this race. Going to be interesting to see what he does amongst the leaders. Then the first driver to win the race off the pit lane, Robert Balcom, ahead of Bernie Mobbs, Dante Risi, Dave Melson, Andre Mongan in the 27, and Chuck McClure rounding out the top 10 on the restart. Going to restart on lap 54 of 88, 35 laps left here at Michigan. And one more pit stop for everyone in this race. So it'll be interesting to see how the strategy plays out, especially if we get another caution. That could definitely shake things up here at Michigan.
You watch the front row here. Actually, if you watch your top 4 right there, you can see how the cars kind of look like they're jerking forward. The rear end is coming up in the air. What's going on right there? They're clutching. They're saving fuel to try and be able to stretch it a little further. So depending on how much they were able to save under this caution, they might be able to stretch it without having to come to pit road, maybe up to lap 70. The guys behind them, though, they can stretch it to 75 before making their final pit stop of the day.
Here we go. Second restart of the day here in Michigan. Lap 54 of 88. 35 to go in RTG Winston Cup Series action from Michigan.
It's all kind of the question of now with them all bunched up, are we racing to our final round of green flag pit stops or are we racing to our next caution? Because we've seen a little bit of both here during the course of the first 50 laps of this race. And now, as we enter into the second half of this race, that's when the aggression kicks up and there's more take than there is give.
Robert Balcom giving Bob Dixon a push there on that inside lane, but Grant Wesley able to hold on for now. Frank Rivard trying to work the outside on Dixon, and he's going to be able to keep a nose on the 143, but Balcom is coming. Jeffrey Elliott going to fall to 5th there. Balcom definitely the fastest of the guys who came down, or the highest through the field right now of the guys who came down. Here comes Monjan in the 27. Great run for him on the inside lane. Those guys on the outside did not get a good jump. Bernie Mobbs falling back in the 90 right now. Dixon's going to go to 2nd. And now Balcom to the inside of Frank Rivard for 3rd. Not going to have the run to the inside of the 35 quite yet.
Yeah, Frank Rivard is dropping quickly, losing a lot of momentum as the car is pushing up off of the corner. That's opening up the door. We got a wreck in the back. One car up and into the wall hard in turn 4.
Dave Melson in the 13, and heavy left side damage on his machine, and our 3rd caution of the night here at Michigan.
And this makes things very interesting in terms of fuel strategy, because now we're going to enter into more than likely going back green somewhere in the vicinity of a little less than 30 laps to go. So, even if these drivers come to pit road, yes, they're going to have to pit one more time, but now they get the choice of whether they want to pit as soon as the fuel window opens or if they want to stretch it and maybe go out there with whatever they need in the tank with maybe 6 or 7 laps to go in this race. That's all if we don't have another caution between now and the checkered flag.
Of course, that was our shortest green flag run of the race. So, who knows? We could easily end up with another caution here tonight at Michigan. But Dave Melson with heavy damage. Doesn't look like anyone's going to come down this time. So they're all just going to stick with the strategy. I'm wrong about that. Oh, interesting. Frank Rivard first to lead him down. Robert Balcom also coming down. Same with Jeffrey Elliott, Dante Risi, Chuck McClure, Bernie Mobbs, all coming down the pit lane. Wesley and Dixon stayed out. So did Monjin in the 27. Terry Bombard and Stefan Martel. Andre Rayum also stayed out. So 6 guys. Actually, Mitch Bombard and Jim Glad also staying out. Cy Jones and Dave Melson. A lot of those guys have been a little bit off the pace. Same with, with Jim Glad and Cy Jones, and even Mitch Bombard. They've been involved in wrecks here today, so they will most likely come back down again. But Balcom wins the race off. Chuck McClure, Terry Bauman, and Ronald Lucey. So they topped off. Let's go ahead and see what happened to Dave Melson in the 13 to bring out this caution.
Yeah, when we went back and looked at the replay, it looked like he, I don't know if he thought maybe that Terry Bauman was getting a big run on him. He tried moving up to maybe get out of his way, but he overstepped that cushion. He went outside to the dark gray, and there's no grip up there. And you saw as soon as that right rear went up into the light gray area, that's what snapped his car around.
Oh, yeah. And he just lost it.
And I'll tell you, at these type of tracks, rear end damage is one of the worst things to have, because if you're loose going into a corner, when you don't have that rear spoiler up in the air giving you downforce, you're going to be slipping and sliding every single lap after sustaining rear end damage. And I think that might have actually been something that might have contributed to why we had our second caution with the 72 of Ploward when he ended up spinning around. Was he had that rear end damage that might have given him the loose condition where he had to get on the brakes to try and save it. So I guarantee you the 13 of Melson, he's going to be fighting that race car here for these final 30 laps.
We'll have to see what Melson can do here. He's going to come down the pit lane and try to get the damage repaired.
I'm trying to go back and trying to figure out what the strategy is here for Robert Balcom. We know he's got a strong enough car to get up there to the front of the field again here. We know that he's able to challenge Wesley. They were side by side in that great battle back around lap 20 to lap 30. But he's given up track position now twice to come down pit road. That either says to me he's got a lot of confidence in his race car to be able to get back up to the front and work his way through traffic. But the thing I'd be worried about, though, is the fact that you've got a lot of cars up ahead of you. You're going to be back in the hornet's nest when we go green. Why give up the track position when you might be putting yourself in a chance of getting involved in a wreck?
Yeah, by the looks of this race, we could see a few more wrecks, and I would imagine Jim Glad will be coming back down the pit lane. Don't know if he'll restart in the 7th position there. But Balcom in 8th, with 7 cars ahead of him at the moment. Chuck McClure also came down. Lucey came down. Dave Little. Haven't seen much of Dave Little in this race, but he's had a quiet day and right with these guys on that cycle of pit strategy. Nisus also up here. Frank Rivard's actually fallen back quite a bit in the 35. And same with Dante Risi. They're going to restart deep in the field for this one. And it does appear that Jim Glad's going to stay out in the 72. That'll definitely be interesting for this restart.
Yeah, it's going to move him up to, I believe, the 6th position, as Mitch Bombard just brought the 97 to pit road here, getting the 1 to green signal. You see the 7 of Cy Jones going around. He's 3 laps down. He just got the lucky dog, so put him 2 laps down now to the leaders. Right now, I believe that all 22 cars that took the green to start this race, they are all still running in this event, and 21 of them currently on the lead lap.
So only 3 cautions in this race so far. And only 1 driver out of the race, the number 9. Been a pretty solid day for Grant Wesley. I believe he's led the most laps so far. Robert Balcom a close second in the 0-18, but Balcom is going to be restarting a little bit deeper than he'd like. He's going to be restarting 7th alongside Chuck McClure, but our race leader is Grant Wesley to the inside of Bob Dixon. That's the first row. Andre Magin in the 27 to the inside of Terry Bombard. Then you have Stefan Martel to the inside of Jim Gloud, and you see the damage the 72 has. I would imagine he's going to fall back a little bit. We'll have to see, though, if he can hold on and stay in the draft. Robert Balcom, who was probably had the best race car here tonight, of course, since he won last week, had to start in the back of the field for this one, alongside Chuck McClure there in row at number 4, and then Ronald Lucey and Dave Little round out the top 10. Our third restart of the night, lap 60 of 88, 29 laps to go. And I do believe that everyone is still going to have to make another stop. And Martel did not get going on the restart, and that is going to jam up Balcom. McClure's going to get around the 18, and they're on the same strategy.
Well, I'll tell you, 2 cars didn't get going. One on the inside, one on the outside. Martel on the bottom and Plewart on the outside line. Neither one of them got going at all.
You see Jim Cloud.
Dave Little
tapped the outside wall there. They're going to swarm around Cloud in the 72 right now. Here comes Bombard with a huge run to the inside of Bob Dixon for second. Now he's going to have a run out around.
No!
Oh, my. He is going to save it. I don't think the caution's going to come out for that.
That was off the racing surface, so I think you're right. I don't think that did bring out a yellow. Tremendous job by a bunch of guys there not to run him over. I think Frank Rivard almost got into that. Also Robert Balcom, but how did everybody else keep those cars straight?
They were 4 wide coming across the line, I do believe, and they have figured it out. But Terry Bombard, who came into this race third in the points, he may leave second, considering that Jeremy Jeffries did not start tonight. But wow, what a save. He may not get a good finish tonight, but that is definitely one of the moments of this race. Andre Mongeon in the 27 trying to get around Bob Dixon, and Balcom on the apron as the caution is back out. I believe Nisus got around in the 54.
I believe you're correct. And boy, what a big break there for Bombard in the 10 then to have this yellow flag to be able to catch back up. Didn't hit anything when he spun out, but obviously lost a ton of track position. So that caution was a saving grace for him.
Wow.
I know. I told the league admin, Dante Risi, I said, you know, we saw you go 4 wide in practice. We want to see you go 4 wide in the race. I wasn't expecting it was going to be 4 wide like that incident we had off of turn 4.
That was definitely a very interesting moment. Now, the pit strategy is going to get even more interesting. Balcom has moved himself up to 5th. I would imagine at some point we're going to see Wesley and Dixon come down, and they're going to come down right here, and it looks like Dante Risi, nope, Frank Rivard going to be the first one who stays out. Robert Balcom is down again, though, but this time the leaders have come down with them. The 88 of Grant Wesley, 143 of Bob Dixon, and the 27 of Andre Mongeon also down. You guys stayed out. Frank Rivard, Dante Risi, Jeffrey Elliott, Stefan Martel, Bernie Mobbs, Terry Bauman, and then the guys who are on the tail end and a lap down. Chuck McClure wins the race off of those guys. McClure's had a quietly good race in the 17. I'll say that much. And Richard Martin, I think he's on the same lap now. Martin's kind of back in this. Melson as well. They're going to jump the 0-18, and Robert Balcom is going to be even deeper in the field this time for this restart.
Well, you mentioned that McClure has had a somewhat quiet day. He was actually the guy that we may need to send a new pair of shorts down to that almost ran into the spinning Terry Bombard there off of turn 4. Did a tremendous job getting off of him. We looked back at the incident there with the 54 of Robbie Nisus. I'll tell you something that's kind of perplexing me right now. We didn't see this in the early portions of the race, but now a lot of drivers are getting very aero loose on the entrance into turn 3. Bombard had his car snap around on him in the middle of 3 and 4. It eventually looped around off of the exit of turn 4, and then Nisus lost his in the entrance of turn 3. So all of a sudden, we're starting to see drivers fighting for rear-end grip. I don't know if it's the fact of the cold tires on these restarts that's causing them to slip and slide around, or if there's something in the track conditions now later on in this race, but a little bit puzzling because we didn't see really any of these type of struggles in the first half of this race.
We did not. Definitely getting interesting because of all that. Frank Rivard will be the race leader, but, back to what you were saying there, I'm seeing a few of these guys coming down the pit lane and not taking tires, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it could be a fact that these guys are on older tires. And could be the oldest the tires have been all race for these guys. Just a theory.
When I looked back at when Bombard spun, I definitely can guarantee you he was in the throttle through the entirety of maybe the latter third of turn 1 all the way out of turn 4, because he had that huge run when he made the pass for second. He was closing in on Grant Wesley then for the race lead, so he never lifted. And more often than not, if you keep your foot in the throttle, that actually gives you more downforce and keeps your car stabilized. If you start feathering the throttle, that's when the back end wants to come around. So just the fact that he was still in the throttle and the rear end came around, and it makes it a little bit more of a mystery. And that's maybe something that all these drivers from front to back are going to have to think about here, especially if we have numerous late race restarts.
We'll have to see what they think once we're done with this one, because, like you said, we haven't seen it up until recent. And one of the best in the series just did it now. He did an excellent job saving it in the number 10. But we've seen it a few times the past few laps here. Stefan Martel's going to come down, same with Terry Bauman.
I love this strategy on the 57 and the 69 because when we hit the line, 24 laps to go. That's right on the cusp of the fuel window. Now, some of these other guys, they're out here saving under caution, so they might be able to make it as well. I would be a little bit questioning, though, about guys like Rivard, who are up here at the front, on whether they can make it on fuel or not. They're going to have to do a lot of saving here under pacing. Dante Risi, as well as the 056 of Jeffrey Elliott. I think they're going to have to do a lot of saving here if we go green to the end to make sure they're going to be able to make it. Because being at Michigan, you spend more time in the throttle than you do feathering it. If you're half throttling, you can save. You do that here, you're going to lose a lot of momentum and maybe lose the draft.
Exactly. I mean, we've seen the draft come into play in this race very significantly, and if you half throttle it here, you might not be able to stick with that draft. I think Terry Bombard also stayed out there, too, so he's another guy who has to worry about fuel. Not only that, I'm not sure if he's come down the pit lane since he spun, but if he hasn't, you would imagine that those tires are going to be worn out because of that.
I'm not so sure about that. The only reason why I wouldn't think he would have that much of an issue with tires is only a little bit of his spin took place on the racing surface. Most of his spin was spinning through the infield grass, and there is no grip down there in the grass that would wear your tires out. So, I've seen a lot of times at road courses, drivers will run off the course into the grass just to make sure that there's no wear on their tires for a restart. It'll cool it down. So he might be okay.
We'll have to see here in the number 10 machine. But Frank Rivard, Dante Risi, Jeffrey Elliott, Terry Bombard, they have not come down. Chuck McClure, Richard Martin, Dave Melson, Grant Wesley have come down under this last caution. Very interesting restart right there. Richard Martin, I think he's still suffering from that damage, and he's slowing up just a little bit in the 43 machine, but they went right to single file there on the restart. Frank Rivard going to jump out to the race lead with Dante Risi and Jeffrey Elliott.
I don't know if maybe the 35 and the 84 worked out a deal there, like the Joey Logano okie dokie of, here, I'll let you get a jump, and then I'll jump to the inside. You saw that Risi waited till the start-finish line was crossed before he went to the inside line, so he wouldn't get called for a lane change, but now he's under fire. Here comes Jeffrey Elliott for second place.
How about this 13? Moving himself inside the
Incredible.
top 5. Dave Melson, just a couple of cautions ago, lost control of the race car and slammed it into the outside wall. Now, he's inside the top 5, or really close to it. He was 6th the last time around. If he gets around Bombard, he'll be in the 5th position. Now to the outside, Jeffrey Elliott on Frank Rivard. You got to think, too, a lot of these guys who are running up front, with the exception of Bombard and Risi, have not won this season, so a lot on the line here in Michigan for these guys running up front.
I'll give you 2 reasons why a lot of these guys are up here now trying to see if they can get a win at Michigan. And those 2 reasons are Pocono and Sonoma. That's the 2 racetracks we got up on the next on the schedule. Pocono, a highly technical track. Of course, that turn 3, one of the toughest corners on the entire NASCAR circuit. And then at Sonoma, that's where all your road course aces rise to the top. Some drivers just want to get out of that road course with their car in one piece.
A huge opportunity for a lot of these guys to get a race victory here in Michigan. The big question is for Rivard and Elliott especially. Now, I cannot imagine they'd be clutching in the middle of this pack right now.
I think maybe the strategy they were planning on is they're expecting to see some more yellows. They're keeping this track position as best they can. If they get some more cautions, they can save under those pacing laps and be good to go on fuel. But if we go green to the end, I don't see how they could have possibly saved enough to make it the rest of the way, especially with the fact they're out here cutting the draft for everybody else behind them. That's even more fuel usage for those 2 cars.
Exactly. Dante Risi is slight advantage because he's drafting behind Rivard right here. But Chuck McClure has more fuel than these guys, but even he's on the edge to make it. It just depends on how much he clutched it under that yellow flag. Terry Bombard in the 10 is going to slip up a little bit there, and he got loose off the corner. Here comes Dave Melson to the inside, and don't look now. Here comes Robert Balcom in the 018, now up to 6th. And Grant Wesley as well in the 88. The two guys you mentioned, we saw them coming down right at the end, Terry Bauman and Stefan Martel. They came in with 24 laps to go. Odds are, I would imagine, they should be able to make it to the end, but then again, they might not be. We'll just have to see. Here comes Wesley for third on Chuck McClure as Frank Rivard continues to lead. Jeffrey Elliott in second, looking to the outside of Rivard now.
I'm going to throw a little bit more fuel on the fire here of maybe the strategy of the 35 and the 056. We've run, what, maybe 3 or 4 laps of pacing every time we've had a caution. This league, with the in-game yellows, we run the scheduled distance, and sometimes the race will end under green, sometimes it'll end under caution. If we end up having a caution come out somewhere around lap 85, 86, this race will end under yellow. Frank Rivard and Jeffrey Elliott might be planning on having just enough fuel to make it to that point in case the late race yellow comes out.
We'll just have to see. But they're going to have to hold off this guy. Grant Wesley, Chuck McClure, or Jeffrey Elliott, he lost it. Balcom, McClure, and Wesley all got around him, and now Lucet's going to get around him in the 62. Lucet's going to go up to the 5th position. Dave Melson's here as well. Richard Martin trying to rebound, doing a nice job right now in the 43. Still inside the top 10 for the race lead. I think this might be it. Grant Wesley looking to the outside of Frank Rivard. And Rivard's going to lead that lap, but Wesley's going to take it away.
Look at Balcom.
Entering turn 1.
Balcom had a huge run there going into turn 1, but he couldn't quite get to the left rear quarter panel of Rivard by the time they got to the entrance of the corner. So he'll get by McClure for third and now set his sights on the 35 down the back straightaway.
He's looking to the outside now. He's going to push Rivard down the backstretch here in Michigan. You know, if I'm Balcom, I might want to pressure Rivard into using a little bit more fuel possibly, because I think Rivard's still trying to keep him behind. And Balcom's not really looking right now. He's going to make the move right there to the inside. That's going to bring McClure and Lucet in, and Melson in the 13 as well. And all the usual faces starting to move their way up front. But Grant Wesley's yet to win a race this season. He's been one of the more dominant guys here in Michigan. A huge opportunity for him to get a race victory, but he's going to have to hold off Robert Balcom in this one, I think, if he's going to get the job done.
As we watch this battle for the lead brew, just got to give a shout out to 3 guys who have sustained damage in this race, and they're up in your top 10 right now. Wait a minute, did we just have a wreck take place? Because all of a sudden the field got gapped. No, we didn't have a wreck. But something happened here. I was going to talk about the 72 of Jim Glued up here in that mellow yellow machine. I guess that rear end damage now is actually coming into effect. I was seeing him up there running around the 8th position. Thought he might be up to speed, but he's now faded outside the top 10. But you mentioned Dave Melson getting involved in a wreck, and same for Richard Martin hitting the wall off of turn 2. Tremendous comeback for both of those drivers right now, slotted in the 6th and 8th positions.
And we mentioned, Richard Martin had all his damage. Jim Gloud, he's been all over the place in this race.
Oh!
He's had
Car on the apron. That was Chuck McClure. Sorry, he had his left side tires down the apron. Thought that car might go around on him, but he saves it.
And that's going to open the door for Dave Melson to get a run for the 5th position. Frank Rivard's still up here, running in the 3rd position right now. Ronald Lucet, this is the highest we've seen Lucet all day in that 62 machine. We'll have to see if he has an opportunity at possibly finding a way around our race leaders here. But Grant Wesley, I got to imagine he's not really saving much fuel right now leading this race. That might not be a good position. And I would almost think Robert Balcom's just going to stay behind him and get that draft and save enough to make it to the end.
Yeah, right now, Balcom's in a great position. To your point, he's allowing the 88 of Grant Wesley to cut the draft for him, so he's able to save fuel. Plus, you've got Frank Rivard behind him in 3rd place. He's on older tires, so there's very little chance he's going to be able to get a big enough run to get up here and get to that 18. You saw right there, actually, Rivard, he's in save mode. That car just clutched going into turn 1.
Yeah, now that he's not the leader, he has the opportunity to do that. You know, Ronald Lucet right behind them, though, and I would imagine Lucet might stay behind the 35 and try to save as well. I think all these guys are in save mode. The only guy who can really push it is Terry Bauman. He's currently in the 14th position, so he's a little ways behind. But Grant Wesley holding on to the lead for now. What do you do if you're Grant Wesley? I mean, you know you're out front. You're not in a good position to save fuel. Do you almost want to let Balcom go by and try to draft him? Or do you think Balcom's saved enough already where he might not want to make that move?
Well, it's really between a rock and a hard place, I think, if you're Grant Wesley. You don't want to let that 18 car by, because we saw when Balcom made the pass on him earlier on near the halfway point of this race, Wesley had to just ride in second. He didn't have a car strong enough to pass the 18 car back. Whereas on the flip side, though, to your point, he's using up the fuel out there. So I don't really know where they were on the numbers, whether he can make it or not. But if he can't, I think right now he's kind of made his bet. He's got a lie, and he's got to maybe hope for a caution to come out, maybe win this race under yellow, or be able to save some under a caution for a restart. But right now, I think he's got no choice. He's got to keep that car out in front and just run that tank dry.
I don't know if they're going to let him fall back. Balcom had a run entering turn one, but he stayed right behind him, so it is clear that Balcom is also trying to save right here. Frank Rivard in the 35. Of course, he is worst off of these guys he's running with. He last came down, I think, under the caution before the last one. So it's been a while for Frank Rivard. I'm not entirely sure which lap it was. Ronald Lucet is on the same strategy as the 018 and the 88. Same with Dave Melson. So it's going to be interesting to see if these guys run out, if someone saved enough fuel to make it to the end. Jeffrey Elliott, he's on the same strategy as Rivard. He's actually found his way back to 6th, but he's going to peek out here. And Bernie Mobb's looking to the inside of them there, but I believe they're going to remain single file down the backstretch.
Yeah, both those guys, Elliott and Rivard, have been able to maintain good track position, even though they stayed out under the last caution. One driver that has not been able to have that happen is third in the points, Terry Bombard, who brought out that latest caution. Well, actually, he didn't bring the latest caution, but he spun just before it. He is all the way back now in the 14th position and dropping even more. That car with those older tires, he is not moving up towards the front, and so he is hoping and praying maybe for a quick yellow to come out here before we get into that buffer zone of about 4 laps to go.
A tough day there for Terry Bombard. Had a good run going for him until he spun the car around, and third in points. He probably will move ahead of Jeffries in this race, considering the smaller field we have tonight, but definitely not going to gain on our points leader, Dante Risi, as much as he'd like. He's actually still ahead of Dante Risi, but I think Risi might get around him here on this lap. Back up front, we now have ourselves at the stripe. 8 laps to go at Michigan for Grant Wesley. Balcom staying right behind him here. Jeffrey Elliott seems to be attempting to make moves on these guys. I don't know if I'd be doing that considering the fuel's a little low for him, but 056 is making it interesting back in there. He's now side by side with Bernie Mobbs. Mobbs might get a run on the outside of him here.
Yeah, and that right there shows you fresh tires versus old tires. You saw the 056 of Jeffrey Elliott pushing up off of turn 2. To your point, I don't really know why he's trying to make moves right now, because he doesn't have the grip underneath him to be able to make them, especially off of corner exit. We've got a battle now for third. Ronald Lucier's decided, okay, it's time for me to go. I'm done driving behind you. I think he's kind of gotten tired.
And now Balcom.
Oh, yeah, Balcom going for the lead. But I think that Lucier finally decided, you know what, I'm losing momentum with this 35 clutching in front of me. I got to go.
And now they're side by side for the race lead. Robert Balcom and Grant Wesley. If I'm Wesley, I'm going to try to make Balcom race for it.
Watch the 62. He's going to get a big toe down the back straightaway here. He might be able to get into this battle off of turn 4.
We're just going to have to see Wesley holding strong in that outside lane. And he's going to get the run up top. I'm not entirely sure. No, Balcom will clear. So Balcom now back out front here in Michigan. 6 laps to go. Lucet is here in the 62, and he might try to make a move on Wesley. Rivard in 4th, Melson in 5th, and Wesley back to the inside with the crossover on Balcom.
Gracious, the front and rear bumper of those two cars might have been touching when the 88 drove it to the inside for the top position. That's going to bring Lucé right there as well in the 62 with him. And I would kind of put Lucé as maybe the dark horse to watch here. We haven't talked about him much in the early portions of this race, but remember, he finished top 5 last week, 3rd place, was the only driver in the top 5 last week not to lead a lap.
And Ronald Lucé is now in 2nd. Robert Balcom going to push him to the inside of Grant Wesley. And almost thought the caution was out. We had, that was Jeffrey Elliott. He's come down the pit lane. Looked like the pace car there for a moment, but that's not a good sign for Frank Rivard in the 35. I'd imagine Rivard's going to have to try to come down here soon, but Wesley back up front. Balcom going to try to move back to the inside of Lucé for 2nd.
Either Elliott didn't do a lot of saving under caution, or else, to your point, Rivard is going to be in big trouble as they are stacked up from 4th place on back there. You've got
and
Melson
Bombard
in the
also
13.
came down as well.
Okay, so looks like some of these guys may be short on fuel. I think there may be a couple of guys that might be pitting this next lap as well. So this is getting very interesting now of drivers being able to make it and drivers that can't.
Grant Wesley still leading. He's been out front a long time. I would imagine that he's not going to be as good on fuel as Balcom or Lucé, but he was able to race Balcom and Lucé a little bit there, so he may have been able to use up a bit of their fuel in that battle. I'd watch out for Dave Melson. He really hasn't been pushing it too hard, been trapping behind these guys. He may have saved enough compared to these guys, but Frank Rivard is now coming down in the 35. He just simply did not have enough. 3 laps to go in Michigan for Grant Wesley. Wesley now trying to trap Terry Bombard, but he's going to make a move to the inside of him there and put Bombard a lap down in the 10.
And we are now in the buffer zone as Bernie Mobbs trying to make a move on Melson for 4th. Can't do it. Mahjong right there in that vicinity as well. That if a caution comes out, it's race back to the line and race would end under yellow. So unless we take the white flag, we would probably have this race end under the caution. If they make it back to the white, we're racing back to the checkers no matter what. As Balcom makes a look to the inside, Wesley left the door open.
Wesley going to be side by side with Balcom once again.
Where does Lucé go? Is he going to go up top with the 88 and help him into turn 1? No, he stays low with Balcom. He may think about going up the middle here, going into turn 1. Instead, rides in the tire tracks of the 18.
And Lucé's going to try to take 2nd away from Grant Wesley. Next time by, it's the white flag here in Michigan in the RTG Winston Cup Series. Robert Balcom has taken the race lead away from Wesley. Wesley's going to fall to 3rd. Bernie Mobbs is up to 4th. Dave Melson fell back in the 13. I don't know if he's starting to run out of fuel or not, but either way, these guys are going to try to make it anyway. Coming to the white flag here in Michigan for Robert Balcom. Will Ronald Lucé lead 1 lap and win this race? He's yet to lead a lap, but he's 2nd with 1 lap to go.
I'd love where I am if I'm Lucé in that 62, about maybe a half car length off the bumper of the 18. Going to get a nice tow down the back straightaway here. If you're Balcom, you're probably going to hug that yellow line, force the 62 and the 88 to make a move on the outside line going into turn 3.
Will Wesley help the 62 of Lucé? A half lap to go here in Michigan. Robert Balcom holding on to the race lead for now. As long as he hugs the inside, he should be able to keep it on Lucé. Lucé had a run, couldn't get to him. And Wesley going for 2nd. The strongest car of the day, Robert Balcom, is going to win here in Michigan in the Winston Cup Series. His 4th win of the season and 2 in a row here tonight at the Michigan International Speedway.
And from back to front, started shotgun on the field and had to work his way up to the race win.
And they had enough fuel to make it. Robert Balcom, 3rd win of the season. Or should I say, 4th win of the season. Excuse me. Been a pretty strong run for him here. Great to see him get that race victory considering all that he's been through. And a great comeback for Robert Balcom here in the Winston Cup Series.
Absolutely. There were a couple of times he came to pit road for tires. I kind of questioned him giving up the track position, but with the timing of those later yellows in this race, it certainly worked out to his benefit, and he made the move at the right time, had the strongest car. As soon as he got out in front, neither Lucé nor Wesley had anything for him. They made a challenge, but I don't think that either one got really any closer than half a car length in those final 3 laps.
Robert Balcom, your race winner here in Michigan as he celebrates his 4th win of the season. Ronald Lucey, a close second. That was the highest he ran all night long, so a good run for him in the 62. Grant Wesley finishing third. Bernie Mobbs finished fourth, and Andre Mongeon finishing in the fifth position. Then Dave Melson, Bob Dixon, Chuck McClure, Richard Martin, and Terry Bauman, the top 10. And doing the donuts in victory lane is Robert Balcom with his fourth win of the year.
Got some drivers there too that had some early struggles and did a pretty good job of bouncing back, even though they finished just outside the top 10. Jim Glood was involved in 2 cautions today, finishing 11th. Stefan Martel in 12th. Benoit Plort, he was actually a lap down in this race earlier on. He finishes on the lead lap in 13th. Mitch Bombard and Andre Rayum going to finish the top 15. And then the rest of these guys back here, a lot of them were ones that could not make it on fuel. And one of the more important ones is Dante Risi having to pit there in the closing stages of this race. Last car on the lead lap in 19th. Terry Bombard, who came in third in points, also had to pit, finished a lap down in 20th. So even though he didn't win today, Grant Wesley is going to gain a lot of points after Michigan.
He definitely will. It was a strong run for Grant Wesley. Of course, I think he may have led the most laps in this race. Not 100% sure if he did, so he may have gotten an extra bonus point from that. But still a great run for Wesley either way on, of course, Robert Balcom. I mean, I think it was pretty clear when he moved his way through the field that he had the strongest car. No surprise to see him in victory lane here at Michigan. And I believe we interview the top 3 guys here for this race.
Yes, we do.
Somebody in here.
We're going to see if we can get our third place finisher here, Grant Wesley.
Grant Wesley finished in the third position, came into this race fourth in points, 74 points behind, with Jeremy Jeffries failing to start and Dante Risi finishing a lot deeper in the field that he would have liked to. I would imagine Wesley is going to have a much closer range to Dante Risi in the overall championship after this one here tonight at Michigan. Of course, Terry Bombard will gain on Jeffries, but he will not gain on Risi as Risi finished ahead of him by 1 position.
All right, we should be getting our top 3 here.
And they're still congratulating each other. A great race here for Robert Balcom. And the 018 with his 4th win of the year. We'll interview the top 3 here. Grant Wesley, Ronald Lucey, and Robert Balcom here from Michigan. But final thoughts on this race, Seth. It was definitely interesting the way the fuel strategy came into play there, but glad to see a lot of those guys be able to make it at the end of that race.
Yeah, definitely. I was kind of wondering with the timing of that last yellow, who was going to be able to make it, who wasn't. Sometimes the fuel with the CTS physics can kind of fool you. You kind of do the numbers, and sometimes you may get it 1 or 2 laps a little too short in your calculations. So I don't know if some of these guys might have been sputtering when they were starting to cross the start-finish line for that checkered flag, but I have a feeling it was really, really close. And definitely that last yellow made it very interesting in terms of fuel strategy, as we managed to see a couple of drivers could not make it on fuel. They were anywhere from 2 to 3 laps short.
Yeah, of course, a lot of those guys who were not able to make it stayed out under that last caution. Frank Rivard, Dante Risi, Terry Bombard, a few of those drivers, Jeffrey Elliott as well. They all finished 18th through 21st, respectively. So, unfortunately, the strategy didn't work out for them. But if we did end up with that caution that would have ended the race, they might have been able to make it. And that might have been the strategy they were going for there when they stayed out under that last caution.
Absolutely. We're still trying to see if we can get Grant Wesley up here, and we do have him.
Grant
now.
Wesley finishing third. He had a great night here. You led, I believe, the most laps here in this one, but just couldn't hold off Robert Balcom there. But was fuel an issue near the end of the race? Because we know you guys came down right around the fuel window, especially considering the caution. What was the last few laps of this race like, considering that fuel could have been an issue at the end?
Yeah, that's one of the great things about this series is they limit the tire stops to 4 stops. So strategy always gets real interesting towards the end, and I still had a set left when we finished the race, and I came down there with that caution. I stayed out for a while, and I knew the cars behind me had better tires, so I pitted with like 27 to go, I think, when that caution landed, and I knew if I clutched that I can make it on fuel. So I ended up finishing the race 1 lap to the good.
And that was a good run for you, and couldn't hold off Robert Balcom there, but still a great run. You're going to move yourself up in the points a little bit. Definitely close in on Dante Risi there, but still haven't gotten a win yet this season. I know you've been very consistent. Hopefully one will be coming here in the future.
Yeah, that's consistency usually leads to wins. You just have to kind of keep plugging away at it.
Well, either way, a great run for you here in this one. A third place finish, led a lot of laps, and overall strong day here at the Michigan International Speedway. Good luck in the next race at Pocono here in the Winston Cup Series.
Yeah, Pocono is a good track for sure. Yeah, but I definitely want to give Robert Balcom a shout out, man. He drove his heart out. Terry did a really good job building this track. This track, provides 2 good lines, and it's got a little bit of the drafting down the straightaways, so you can't exactly get away from people. And Robert and Ronald there at the end, that was just so much fun.
Well, we definitely enjoyed the show you guys put on. It was a great race from start to finish. Thank you guys so much for putting on such a great show for us, and yeah, good luck on the rest of the season.
Yeah, thanks. And I'd like to thank the owners here, Terry Ballman, David Cannon, Sean Prime, XFM, and yeah, everybody for all the admins. They do a really great job putting this series on, and you guys for broadcasting.
You're very welcome, and congratulations on your third place run here in Michigan.
Thank you.
All right, and I believe we'll get Ronald Lucet in here in a moment. Second place finisher here at Michigan.
Yeah, back-to-back top 5 finishes for him, and we do have him here. Ronald Lucet bringing it home second place. And I mean, Ronald, obviously you had some great momentum with your top 5 run of third last week at Richmond. You do it one better here, second place today. It kind of looked like maybe the right front tire heat was kicking in there late, where you weren't able to quite get to the inside of Robert Balcom there for the race lead. What, if anything, did you need a little bit extra to be able to get him going down there on that final lap?
Two turn, yeah, two more laps.
We saw that obviously pit road was a big issue for a lot of drivers there with the green flag pit stops, but it definitely looked like you were one of the few drivers that was able to what we call hot pit, where you enter in really, really fast and are able to get it down to that 65 miles per hour. Was that a big difference maker, do you think, in you gaining track position? Because it kind of looked like we saw you running mid-pack in the first half of the race, and then all of a sudden you were up there in the top 10, and then eventually the top 5 in the closing stages.
Yeah, I like a bit on the green.
Obviously, this gives you some good momentum as well heading into Pocono, but a tremendous run for you here today with a runner-up finish, a great podium run. Anybody you want to shout out?
Yeah, my friend from Quebec. Thank you. And a lot of guy, very good driver in this league.
All right, that's Ronald Lucet bringing it home in the second position here today at the Michigan International Speedway. Congrats on a great run. Looking forward to you carrying this momentum next week into the tricky triangle of Pocono.
Thank you.
And Ronald Lucet finishing in the second position here tonight. A very strong run, especially considering he wasn't up front the majority of this race. And we'll have to see what he does next week at the Pocono Raceway. But Robert Balcom, the race winner, and a huge win for your 4th win of the season. Of course, we know you've been out a lot of the races this season, but you've had a lot of momentum as of late, and another strong run here at the Michigan International Speedway. What was going through your head there in those final few laps trying to get around Grant Wesley for the race win?
I wasn't sure. Like I said, I was kind of saved my stuff, save my gas a little bit, and save my tires. And then I think it was like 5 or 6 to go. I thought, okay, I'm gonna make my run now. And but I didn't expect him to get back under me and had the run from Ronald. So I just knew to roll out right there. And then I was like, okay, well then I'll just use Ronald to get him back right here. But Grant's a great competitor, man. He these last 2 seasons he has really come a long way. I mean, It felt like we ran 20 laps side by side, and that's what makes it great, where you can trust the guy that you're running beside not to get into you or going to run over you, and that what makes this game so much fun, when you can trust that guy.
You guys put on a really great show there, especially when you guys were going side by side for multiple consecutive laps. But I know you and Grant Wesley had the same fuel mileage. Did fuel ever become an issue there at the end, or did you guys know you can make it to the end of the race?
It was pretty close. Those few pit stops when I kept coming in, I wasn't getting any tires, because you only get in this league here, you only get 4 sets, and I wanted to make sure I got that one set left. So if we had like a 10 lap shootout or something, so I more or less just kept topping it off, and I had it down to a can. So I kind of had the advantage on the fuel there, and then I think it was Terry got real loose then down in 3 and 4. I don't even know how we missed him, but right then when everybody come in, I knew to go ahead and get a set in. And I knew I just kind of had my mind set just to stay behind Grant and work my way up through there, because we kind of ran the same line as far as letting out, picking the throttle up. So I was able just to work with him and get back up there. But I think I had two, maybe 3 laps of fuel left, but I was rolling out and popping the clutch a little bit, because I knew Frank behind me was having to save, so it made it easier for me to pop my clutch and save some too. So
Yeah, Robert, I want to ask you about that move that you made there in the closing stages of this race. We talked about the fact that with the in-game yellows, there was a chance this race could end under caution, and we were running about 3 to 4 laps of pacing under each one of the yellow flags that we had. Is that what came into play, and when you eventually made your move for the race lead, just in case we ended up having a yellow come out, that way you would have the first position under the yellow flag?
oh yeah, it's bit me too many times being the guy to save to right there at the end. So I done made up my mind with once we got the 5 to 6 to go, I was gonna go ahead and try at the end. So if a caution did come out, I knew I'd be in that in that spot. Plus, I was listening to y'all's broadcast, so y'all helped me make that decision pretty easy.
Well, congratulations on your fourth win of the season, especially considering all you've been through. And great to see you running really strong here in the RTG Winston Cup Series. Good luck on the rest of the season. Hope to chat with you more as the season goes along.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate it, guys, and I appreciate y'all taking the time to come over here and, broadcasting for this. It really makes it an honor to race out here, having people like you comment and stuff. And then I want to give a shout out to these owners at RTG. These guys go far and beyond for their drivers. I mean, they got my utmost respect as far as the way they treat us and give us everything we can do. And then last but not least, I want to give a shout out to my wife and my daughter, Jennifer and Kaylin. They're in the background cheering me on the whole time, so I got to make sure I give them a shout out. They're my number one fans.
Well, great fans they are. And yeah, like I said, good luck on the rest of the season. You guys put on a great show, and great to have you here in the RTG Winston Cup Series.
Thank you, guys, and I also want to give a shout out to Ronald. Great run. I mean, he's he's got that language barrier that mess with him a little bit, but man, he ran a great race all night, and my utmost respect for the way he drove me there at the end. So I appreciate that.
A great race all around here from the Michigan International Speedway, and I got to say, I had a blast calling it, and I'm sure Seth did as well. Just an all-around entertaining race here in Michigan, and you guys put on such a great show. But final thoughts, Seth. It was a great night here in Michigan, and what are you looking forward to the rest of the season here after what we saw here at the Michigan International Speedway?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what, just the level of competition that we see here. I mean, we had it basically pegged down to maybe 2 favorites at the midway point of this race. And next thing we know, we had 4, 5, 6 contenders up there that we were thinking they may have a shot of winning this thing. I mean, obviously, Michigan, as we stated, is in a lot of ways fundamental as a super speedway track with the way of the draft, the way of getting runs and everything. So it was kind of considered a bit of a wild card race. But if we look ahead towards the schedule, we've got some real technical tracks coming up with Pocono coming up next week. We got Sonoma the following week for the road course drivers. I mean, this is a tough schedule. It follows the 1999 Winston Cup Series schedule, and there's a lot of tracks out there that maybe some of these drivers don't normally go to in other leagues that they run that they're having to conquer here during this schedule. So, based off what we saw here tonight with the level of competition from the back of the field all the way up to the front, I think that this season is just going to continue to get better and better. And it's going to be really interesting to watch, too, to see, drivers maybe like Robert Bauckham and Ron Lucier, who came into this race 22nd, 23rd in points. Do they have enough time here with just a little less than the second half of the regular season to go to get themselves up there in the championship battle when we eventually get to race 36?
It'll definitely be an interesting season here for the Winston Cup Series, whereas Robert Bauckham may not have a shot at the overall championship, but when it comes to that Chase Championship, he could have a good shot at it. Of course, Jeremy Jeffrey's another guy who may also have a shot at that Chase Championship, but overall, it's going to be a fun season, and we'll have a few of the races for you here, I believe, on the Flatout Racing Network. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. A huge thanks to Flatout Racing Network for letting me call these races. Apparently, I'm good enough for them. And thanks to Seth Cole for helping me out with this whole thing as well and co-commentating along with me. And of course, thanks to the RHG guys for putting on such a great series, great league. These guys race very well, and it's awesome to see some great racing out of these guys. And definitely appreciate the passion they have for Enter 2003 racing. And thank you for watching here tonight from the Michigan International Speedway. On behalf of Seth Cole, I'm Alexander Graham. Thank you guys so much for watching once again. Congratulations to Robert Bauckham, your race winner here in the RTG Winston Cup Series from Michigan. And we'll see you guys next time for the next broadcast here on the Flatout Racing Network. Have a great night, and I will see you guys later.